Let's talk about net present value. So the net present value method relies on present value calculations to compare the amount of the investment, meaning the investment's initial cost, with its expected net cash inflows. So because the cash outflow for the investment occurs now, but the net cash inflows from the investment occur in the future, companies can only make valid apple-to-apple comparisons if they convert the cash flows to the same point in time. So we need to convert all those future cash flows into today's dollars, so present value. The discount rate is also known as what's called the hurdle rate, or the required rate of return. So it is the minimum rate of return for the proposal to be accepted. Now, if the NPV, the rule of thumb here is if the NPV, the net present value, is greater than or equal to 0, then we would accept a proposal. So here's some typical cash inflows from an investment. So we might get a salvage value at the end when we sell it. It might be reduced cost. There may be some additional revenues earned, or we may get to release some of our working capital. Typical outflows in net present value calculations would be things like working capital, which is current assets minus current liabilities. So the initial investment in working capital will be an outflow of cash. And then it is recaptured typically at the end of the project when we don't need any more working capital. So it's recognized as a cash outflow at the beginning of a project and a cash inflow at the end of the project. So we've got our initial investment, things like repairs and maintenance and incremental operating costs. So the NPV, the net present value, is the difference between the present value of the investment's net cash inflows and the investment's cost. And we discount those net cash inflows back to their present value. So the rate is called the discount rate because it is the interest rate used for the present value calculations, or it's called the required rate of return, or hurdle rate, because the investment must meet or exceed this rate to be accepted. The discount rate depends on the riskiness of the investments. The higher the risk, the higher the discount rate. So we compare the present value of the net cash flows to the investment's initial cost to decide which projects meet or exceed management's minimum desired rate of return. So if this particular company is considering producing MP3 and digital video recorders, the products require different specialized machines, each costing $1 million. And they expect that the MP3 project will generate $305,450, which you see up here, each year for 5 years. Now, the NPV in this particular example happens to be positive. It's greater than 0. And a positive NPV means that the project earns more than the required rate of return. A negative NPV means that the project fails to earn the required rate of return. Or a 0 NPV would mean that the project equals the desired return. So the decision to invest in capital assets when using the net present value analysis would be to invest if the net present value is positive, or we would reject or not invest if the net present value was going to be negative.